At 9 years old, I got molested again but this time by a guy, by an older cousin. And he was the one that introduced me to porn at 9 years old. He was always like that cool older brother that I always wanted. So I kind of just went with the flow, and every time I would sleep over, he'd turn on that TV, boom, porn, every single time, right? One time, he came over my house. I remember my uncle saying, yo, it's time to go. And I remember begging him, like, yo, can you sleep over? Can you stay over? He was like, okay, but if you want me to sleep over, you have to do this. My name is Jose Guzman. I'm 20 years old. I'm a psychology major. And so I grew up Catholic. Me and my family grew up Catholic. I did the baptism, the first communion and confirmation. And I remember when my mom was forcing me to do the confirmation, and I told her, I don't think I'm Catholic. I don't want to be labeled as Catholic. Yeah, I believe in God and Jesus, but I don't really want to do this. And I remember my mom, she told me, no, you're going to do this because this is what we do and this is our tradition and you're going to do this. And
how did that make you feel when you heard that?
I didn't feel seen. I didn't feel like what I said really mattered. But that's kind of how I grew up. So I kind of just went with it. So in my childhood, at 7 years old, I was molested for the first time by one of my cousins in New York that I didn't even know that well. I don't know how it happened, but she ended up like staying over our house for the summer for a week or two. And that's kind of where it started. And, she was just super cool to me. She had like all the DS games, the Game Boys, everything. And whenever I asked if like I could play with it, she'd be like, yeah, but if you want to play, you have to do this. And I never really understood it, but I kind of just went with it. And at 9 years old, I got molested again but this time by a guy, by an older cousin. And he was the one that introduced me to porn at 9 years old. He was always like that cool older brother that I always wanted. So I kind of just went with the flow. And, every time I would sleep over, he'd turn on that TV, boom, porn, every single time, right? And it made me feel good. So I just kind of went with it. He was like a big brother to me. And one time he came over my house. I remember my uncle saying, yo, it's time to go. And I remember begging him, like, yo, can you sleep over? Can you stay over? He was like, okay, but if you want me to sleep over, you have to do this. And I remember thinking, like, okay, whatever. And, whatever happened. And I was just in that, just so confused. And, yeah, it just left me very confused.
Is these the only times that it happened, or did it happen again? So how did these encounters affect you looking back now? How did they affect the way that you began to behave?
It affected me in a big way. Because I was molested so many times, I also became curious with other cousins, right? Until, I got older and I just stopped it, right? Because I knew it was wrong. But yeah, because the enemy's tricky. Because, I went through all that molestation and brokenness, I was like giving that out to other people.
Right. And you didn't think at that age, you don't really think that there's something wrong happening. This is just what I know now, right?
Yeah.
Wow. Did you share with your parents or anybody at this point what was happening, or it was just something that was within you and your cousins and your family?
Yeah, it was just something that was kept quiet.
Yeah.
My mother didn't find out until I went to therapy because of, depression, anxiety that my therapist kind of forced me to tell my mom. So
got it.
Yeah.
So give us a little bit more information on or just insight as to, you went through these encounters at a really young age. Then you start to experiment for yourself, now really indulging in it. How did it affect it as you're becoming a teenager and as you're growing up? You mentioned now that you had depression at some point. Like, can you give us a little bit more insight as to how that progressed?
So growing up, my dad was very abusive. And I remember I want to say 7 or 8, he would force me to watch like horror movies at night. And I remember one time I literally like pissed myself on the couch and on myself. And I remember my father saying, you're going to finish watching it until the movie's over. And it was just very traumatic experience. And growing up, he was very abusive. And I remember specifically this one time where when you have like a baptism, we did a little baptism party for my brother. And, he got money for it. And we would put like this, we had this big jar in my room with money that we would put in there for like vacation and stuff. And at this time I was in middle school, and I would take $20 here, $40 there, to go to the movies. I go to the movies with my friends. And he found out that I had took all that money. And I remember my sister taking my little brother out to the park because she knew what was gonna happen when my dad got home. And I remember he went straight to the backyard, which I thought was weird, and he came inside with a piece of wood. And, he started, like, hitting me. He was like, I'm going to show you, like, this is what you do with people that steal money. I remember him beating me and beating me. And, it got to the point where I couldn't even feel the pain anymore. I was on the ground. I couldn't move. And I honestly thought I was going to die that day. And the only reason he stopped was because my mother got home. And I remember my mother saying, like, my dad's name's Jose as well. So she was kind of like, Jose, like, I think he gets the point. I remember, like, he just told me to go to my room, but I couldn't get up because I was just so beaten up. And I remember he carried me and put me on my bed. And 5 minutes later, he came in with bags of ice and started wrapping them on my leg. And then he put a $20 on the dresser and he said, so you can buy yourself something later. And he went to work. And just stuff like that he would do was very traumatic. So growing up, I just had so much resentment and anger, not towards just my family, but towards the world. In middle school, I was very curious with girls. I never did anything at that time, but, I was texting girls the way I shouldn't. I was sending pictures and I was getting pictures. And it wasn't until high school where I fell in love for the first time. I met this girl and she suffered a lot with like depression and anxiety before I even understood what that was really. So it was a very toxic relationship on and off. But one thing I remember her saying was, she said to me, I wish bad things kept happening to me because I knew you would always be there. And at that time I was so in love, and so it didn't matter to me. I just kept running back. It was crazy because every time we would, take that break and we weren't together, I would have 6 other girls that I would be talking. I'll be on FaceTime with one and, talking to so many other girls. I probably hurt so many women like at that time because whenever that my girlfriend would come back, I dropped everything. And it wasn't until it finally ended that I started going through severe depression and anxiety and suicidal thoughts to the point where, I couldn't be in a group with more than 5 people without getting like a severe anxiety and panic attack. And my depression was so bad that there was days where I wouldn't even eat. And I'm already skinny and I'm losing like 20, 30 pounds. And at that time, my parents didn't really think much of it because they just thought I was, rebellious teenager just being in my room. So my parents never really thought much of it.
How old are you at this time?
16.
Okay.
Yeah, and during that time, my sister met her husband now, but at that time they were just getting to know each other. And as the time I was going through all this depression, anxiety, he had came into the picture. So in my mind, I'm like, oh, brother, like this is terrible, right?
Why did you think that was terrible? Just because it was a guy dating your sister, or was there anything specific?
It was because everything I was going through, I had told my sister. And I told her the only thing I requested was, don't tell this guy that I don't even know, right? And a couple of weeks later, I found out that she had told him. So then that's where my hatred and my resentment towards my sister came even stronger. And, I felt like I couldn't trust her or anyone, right? And at that time, my parents weren't even speaking to me because I stopped playing soccer and I was running track, and they were like, we're not going to support you in any other thing you do. And I was kind of like, okay.
Really, really quick, you said the hate for your sister became really stronger. Was there hate before that?
Yeah, because I think she gave her life to Christ when I was in middle school.
Yeah.
And in middle school is when I was starting, to get more curious with girls and skipping school and doing all these things. And, she would always snitch on me and I hated it. I was like, you used to do all these things, so why can't I, right? Yeah, but then, I just despised, like, my sister's husband. And I remember him telling me, like, you're gonna get saved. Like, you're gonna come into the Lord. Your heart desires it. I'm like, yeah, whatever, bozo. And knowing now that I'm saved, I know that the enemy tried to, like, put all these thoughts in my head, like, that it was terrible timing for him to come in. But that happened because the enemy wanted to distract me from the fact that this man, like, now he's like a huge leader in my life. Yeah. And he's helped me grow so much with the Lord. I'm just so thankful for him now. And yeah.
So how did you come to the Lord? Yeah, like how did that begin to happen for you? Obviously now you have somebody who is speaking to you about God and prophesying essentially over you, but then also you have your sister who is an example, but obviously you're not fully there.
Yeah.
What happened for you?
So it was specifically like 2 months before I gave my life to the Lord, where everything was just even more bad. Like like girls was always my thing. Sex was always my thing. I was never really into drugs or smoking. That was never my thing. But the 2 months before I got saved, I started smoking and drinking because I felt so empty inside, and I was just looking for anything to fill that void. And once my sister got saved, she would always invite me to Sunday service or Friday night youth events, and I would always tell her no. But it got to a point where she met this guy, and she would kind of stop asking me, and that made me curious. I was like, yo, now that you stop asking me, I want to go. And I went, and I would see people worshiping and praising God, and it just made me feel very uncomfortable, and it was weird to see, but it was something about it that was tugging me back, knowing I was the Lord. And from that moment, I just kept going consistently and consistently. But the reason I didn't want to give my life to the Lord was because, I didn't want to let go of porn, masturbation, like sex, and all these things that I was doing, right? I didn't want to give all that away. And it wasn't until one Sunday service, there was baptisms after that Sunday service. And I remember staying, and I watched every single baptism, and I heard their testimony, and it just touched my heart. And when that was all over, I remember the pastor saying, there's someone in here who wants to give their life to the Lord, but you keep pushing him away. You keep saying, you'll get saved later, you'll get saved later. But the time is now. He has you here for a reason. I felt so convicted because I knew he was talking about me. But in my mind, I'm like, okay, maybe he's not talking about me. There's a lot of people in here. So I remember walking out, and I remember pastor coming to me and tapping me on my shoulder. And he looked me in the eye, and he said, how are you? And I was like, oh, dang, because I just knew what that meant.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm good. And then I remember he walked away, and I just felt this tug, and I knew it was time. And I went to pastor, and I said, the man you were talking about is me. And he just smiled, and we did the prayer, and I gave my life to the Lord. And ever since then, like, it's been just a radical transformation. Like, all that hate that I had, all that anger and sadness that I was living with for so long, the Lord just took it away. And it was beautiful to see that the first thing the Lord attacked was the molestation. And he would give me dreams of my cousins. He would give me dreams, and just I would pray, and he would tell me that these are conversations that need to be had. These are people you need to forgive. I remember I talked to my leaders about it, and they were like, it would be really beneficial if you did speak to that person. And that's exactly what I did. And and I looked her in the eye, and I apologized for everything. And and the funny thing is she just looked at me. She said, I know. And I just felt this huge, like, just lift come off of me. And
wow. Now, is this the girl that first, well, the second person that put you in that situation?
No, this was
or this is people that you
Yeah.
specifically.
Yeah, because the Lord had told me that this specific cousin that I had the conversation with, she was also molested by the same person.
Wow.
So, and I remember, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
But it's funny that's the first thing the Lord attacked and brought to my attention. And because of the molestation and what had happened to me when I was younger with a guy, after I got saved, then we started putting all these lies in my head that the Lord can't love you. You're gay. Like, what happened when you were little? You wanted it to happen.
Wow.
And at this time, I don't know how this happened, but this rumor got around at work that I was gay, and all my coworkers would come up to me like, yo, are you gay? Are you bi? I'm like, no. And it got to a certain point where people just kept asking and asking. And then I asked myself, like, am I gay? And obviously that was the enemy's plan, and obviously I know I'm not. But I'm just grateful for what the Lord has done. And
How long have you been now, like, faithfully walking with the Lord?
6 months.
6 months.
Yeah.
Can you, looking back at your life and everything that you've been through, what can you say are the differences between before Jesus and now walking with Jesus? You've mentioned a couple, but I just kind of want you to expand a little bit more on that, on what you're experiencing today as you walk with Jesus.
What I'm experiencing now is just love and peace, which I didn't feel for a long time. I was always angry. I was just disrespectful, a bad example from my brothers. Just a disrespectful, rebellious kid. And it's funny you asked that, because my mother a couple of days ago, my family has seen how much I've changed, and My mother told me, she said, the Lord sent you and saved you first so we can know that God is real. Because
Wow.
you went from this angry, horny little kid to this man who preaches the gospel to people, and you're just a great example for your brothers. And just her saying that meant a lot to me.
Yeah.
It meant a lot. And because I went through all that trauma and molestation and abuse and heartbreak, depression, anxiety, I remember when I was like at the darkest spot, I remember praying and I told the Lord, like, if you're real, God, Jesus, whatever, if you're real, I don't want to feel like this anymore. Now that I'm saved, I know the Lord, when he made me go through all that, and it revealed the passion that I have for psychology and mental health, and that is why I'm a psychology major. And I know that's one of my callings, to help children that have gone through molestation and all this abuse. And I know one of my other callings is to be an evangelist. And I'm currently walking through that at my job, and because the grace the Lord has given me, I'm able to. I've brought people who are atheists to church. I've brought people who grew up in the church, but were slut shamed, and men had to sit on one side and women had to sit on one side. And I've had people say to me, "I will never give church another try."
Wow.
And they've came, and it's been beautiful what the Lord's doing.
Yeah. For anybody who's watching your testimony, Jose, whether it's a young person who has gone through some things that you have gone through, or maybe as a parent or someone who knows of someone who has gone through the things that you have gone through when it comes to abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse, what can you say to whoever is watching your testimony right now?
If you're feeling that void in your heart with sex and drugs and porn and masturbation or whatever it is, and you're still feeling that emptiness inside of you, why not give Jesus a shot? And if the word God or Jesus even triggers you, like, you gotta ask yourself, like let's say this, you feel empty right now. Like, you give Jesus a shot, the worst thing that can happen is you'll just end up in the same spot you are in right now, So I would just really encourage you to just give it a shot, because that's exactly what I did, and now I know happiness and I know peace, and it's beautiful.
To anybody who has gone through, specifically has been molested in their lives, and maybe they're haven't told anybody and nobody knows, what can you say to that person?
First thing I would say is, don't blame yourself. What happened to you wasn't your fault, and it would be very healthy and beneficial for you to speak to someone that you trust, someone that won't judge you. Yeah.